Hello, my name is Chris Herman, and I've been asked to give a short presentation on the fiscal impacts of land use, particularly as they relate to Worthington, Ohio. I am a long-time, almost lifelong resident of Worthington, Ohio. Went to Worthington High School. I am also on the Architectural Review Board and the Planning Commission for the city. Have been since 2007. I am planning director for a company called MKSK, which is previously known as MSI Design. We do planning, urban design, and landscape architecture throughout the Midwest, and we are located in downtown Columbus in the Brewery District. I also teach at Ohio State at the Knowlton School in the City Regional Planning Department. I teach a master's class in city regional planning. So this is a field that I have had probably almost 20 years of experience on. So I'd like to share some of the things I know with you. Hopefully that you'll find them interesting and help you think about land use and decisions being made relevant to land use, like development, like zoning, in a different way, hopefully. So let me start with this idea that the fiscal impacts are just one component that a community needs to think about. Obviously, when you think about developing on land or rezoning land or thinking about doing a master plan and what future land use should be, there's many things to think about. Community needs to have great residential neighborhoods, needs to have wonderful schools, needs to have all the services that come along with that. These are all expectations that we have for a great community. But one of the pieces is that we need to have a fiscally healthy community in order to thrive all along the long term. And so what I'm going to talk about today is where those revenue sources come from. One of the big things I want to talk to you about is the income or payroll tax. And this is an important one to understand. And what I'm going to tell you about is about Ohio, because each state has different state laws that impact how taxes work. And in Ohio, the income tax, the payroll tax, is the primary revenue source for cities or municipalities like Worthington. So a majority, typically 50 to 70% of all the revenue that a city takes in a year comes from the income tax. And those are people who are working in the city, working in that city. So you may not actually work in the city of Worthington, you may work in another community, like I work in Columbus. My income tax is actually going to the city of Columbus. It's the people that are actually working in Worthington that are paying these income taxes, whether they live here or not. So today we're talking about a 2–2.5% income tax in Worthington and in Columbus. So when you think about land uses and trying to maximize these income tax revenues, these payroll taxes for a community like Worthington, the city considerations from a land use point of view are anything that's employment based. So the more employees, the better the bottom line is for the city. It also means that the higher the salaries that the employees have in that development, that project, also better for the city. So for example, office users or hospital medical users, those kinds of things, the doctors, lawyers, high paying salaries are from a bottom line city budget, and therefore what cities can provide in services to a community, the highest tier kind of thing that communities look for. So when you think about that, when you apply that to land use decisions, that means things like offices, because you have high paid employees, are a big win for community from development. Industrial users are also a big win. Now there's a little bit tempered because if it's a high-tech manufacturing plant, then there's going to be some high-paying salary jobs there, but there's probably not a lot of people. If it's a warehouse where all you're doing is storing, say, beer, there's probably not a lot of revenue, income tax revenue benefits from that on the income tax side because there's not a lot of people working there. But there's also things to think about that people don't always think about. Schools, so Worthington School District, so all the schools that are in the city of Worthington, there's teacher, faculty, administrators, they all get paid salaries and they're paying income tax into the city of Worthington. So schools are an important thing to consider. Likewise, construction jobs, while they're temporary, while the construction work's occurring in the city, those construction workers are paying income tax to the city. So these are all things to think about when you're talking about the fiscal health of a city. This is an example of the city of Worthington revenue. This is in 2001, just to show you. the big slice of the pie is 57% of the revenue in the year 2001 came from the income tax. And then you can also notice property tax, which we're going to talk about next, was 9% of the revenues that year, and sales tax, which is collected at the county level and distributed back to cities and townships, was 7% for Worthington. And then I also want to point out, just while we're on here, that the inheritance tax was 5%, and that's being phased out. So communities all over the state of Ohio are having to worry about how do we replace that wedge. And in some communities, like Bexley or Upper Arlington, that have a much older demographic, that can vary up to 10, 15, 20% in any one year. Now it varies, so cities can't rely on that, but now we'll no longer be able to rely on that, and we've got to figure out how we replace that amount of revenue. Or we're going to have to correspondingly cut services and salaries at the city level. Here is 2008. So you can see by 2008 we're already up to 62% of the Worthington revenues are dependent on this income tax. And so this goes back to why, for those of you who live in Central Ohio, you can see these battles going on between municipalities fighting over offices, trying to get an office to relocate from one jurisdiction to the next, trying to provide incentives or abatements, and why the different communities get angry at each other for luring one from one to the other, because it's the revenue, it's this income tax revenue that's so important to the lifeblood of cities. Again, you can see here's city revenue amounts in 2008, and you can actually see the dollar amounts that come from income tax, property tax, the inheritance tax, and local government is the sales tax returned back to the city. So the point I really want you to equate is that income tax is the lifeblood of cities. So if you want a city to be healthy, we got to be talking about the income tax. That's the relationship. The other tax I really want to spend some time talking about is property tax, because I don't think property taxes are well understood. I think a lot of people end up getting upset and complaining about property tax levels, but associating them directly with cities where they really need to be associated with schools. And that's the other connection I want you to make. Property taxes really equal schools. And so schools get their primary revenue from property taxes. So typically, you're talking about 75 to 85% of the property taxes in an area, like Worthington, go to the school district. And of that, only 3 to 8% typically go to the city. So it's the property taxes that really help fund the school district. So if you want to have a healthy school district, you want to see increases in property taxes. Where does that come from? That comes from high value properties. So that means the more density you have, the higher the value concentrated on that same acre or quarter acre of land, the more property taxes that's producing. The higher the materials, the quality of development, the amenities associated with that, all increase the value of the property taxes that come from that property. Then there's also some things we can talk about probably for another time, but things like tax increment financing, things like tax abatements, these things take some of, in the case of a TIF, take some of the taxes, property taxes off the top. In the case of property tax abatements, actually take whole sections of property taxes out and use it usually to pay for infrastructure improvements, the bonds related to that for a period of time before then the whole amount gets returned back to the pot and then back to things like schools. And I should also point out, property taxes are the main funding sources of things like the bus system, CODA, things like MRDD, things like the zoo, things like the metro parks, things like the library. So there's a lot of things that get property taxes, and they rely almost solely on property taxes that are also important. But I do want you to really equate property taxes with the school district. So in Worthington's case, one of the things that's interesting, and this is true for a number of communities, particularly in Central Ohio, the school district boundaries have no correlation or little correlation with the city boundaries. So in red is the city of Worthington boundary. So this is the city of Worthington. So when we talk about what services Worthington, the city provides, it's providing services within that red boundary, within the city proper. When we talk about where the city gets revenues, it's all the jobs that are within that red boundary. That's where the city gets its revenues. The school district, the Worthington School District, is actually much larger, 300% larger than the city of Worthington. It's the gray area, all the way up to Delaware County. This is all in the city in the Worthington School District. So it's the property taxes in the gray area that are supporting our Worthington school system. So we can have people that live up near Polaris that are in the Worthington School District actually live in the city of Columbus, and then the zip code post office address are completely different, are actually on a Westerville postal address. And so you can imagine how confused people in that situation get. Are they part of Worthington? Are they part of Columbus? Often our associations, affiliations, particularly for those of us that have families, are at the school district level. So I think a lot of people identify Worthington with the entire school district. But it's important to understand that the services being provided, trash pickup, police, fire, you name it, for this entire area outside of the red boundaries of the city of Worthington, that's being provided by the city of Columbus, because this is all in the city of Columbus or in the township, Sharon Township. So those services are being provided by other entities, and they are in turn getting their revenues, their income tax, from the people working in this case, the city of Columbus. So it's an important distinction to understand what the jurisdiction is you're talking about and what kind of services you're talking about. Talking about property taxes directly as it relates to the city of Worthington. This is for people within the city of Worthington. Property tax distribution that we pay as a resident of the city, you can see 62% in 2008 went to Worthington schools. So again, a large majority of that tax that we pay goes to the schools, goes to making the schools great. And then only 5% went to, in this case, the Worthington Library.